everybody, it's Andre from Guitar Gravity. It's been a while since I've done a live video, and I hope you're doing well, and I hope you've been able to catch my weekly content that I've been posting. I'm just covering different types of guitar topics. We did a vibrato guitar video recently. I did some covers. I covered the Ukrainian national anthem, considering what's going on, so I hope you've been able to see that and support them. I've also done, I did a cover of the Eruption guitar solo. That was lots of fun. That was actually my first time learning that solo, believe it or not, from Eddie Van Halen. So I finally got around to learning that, and that was very challenging, but also very fun. So welcome. Today we're going to have a off-the-cuff discussion on how to bend on the guitar. So if you're around, please let me know where you're tuning in from. Also, if you have any questions, just shoot them out whenever you have a question. I'll try my best to answer it. I'm still learning too, so that I might not know it, but I'll try my best to answer any questions you may have. So let's just dive into the content, and here we go. So bending, like every guitar technique, when it comes to feel, it comes down to feel. The more you play the guitar, the more you get to know the instrument and how to express yourself on it. So that's what how I'd set this lesson up, is just let you know that it does take time, but I do want to encourage you as you explore this technique that it just keep at it, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Bending, it doesn't have to always be in tune, sort of thing. It's just, have fun with it. And the more you practice, the better you will get at it. Okay, so let's just look at the technique itself. So this is, I think, where a lot of people get confused. I'll try my best on a video. Obviously, you can't really see behind because I will describe my hand positioning. So I'll try my best to give you full explanation. So if we look at your hand, we basically want your guitar neck to be right in the palm of your hand. Right? So you want to you want to fit your guitar neck in there. Okay, shouldn't really be any gaps. Should be a comfortable fit. So just take your hand and hold that guitar neck. Also, second thing is, if you notice my thumb is going right around the top here. That's really important because that's going to give you a good grip, especially when you're bending. You want to be loose, but you also want to have control. So that thumb is going to come in handy. You probably hear that sometimes, like, oh, don't put your thumb over the top. Well, we actually really do need your thumb over the top here. Everyone's hand's different, so how that fits for you is going to be different. That's what it looks like for me. So hopefully you guys can see that. All right. Now it comes to the fingers. What you'll notice is that I'm, like when you normally play guitar, you want to try to maintain a nice arc to your fingers. That's really important because it's going to help get your fingers out of the way. So it's going to avoid hitting the other strings. You don't want your fingers bent down, for example, like this, because it's going to be hitting the bottom strings. Or opposite, you don't want to have your fingers bent all the way up like this. That's just very uncomfortable and probably get arthritis pretty soon. So, but yeah, you want to have a nice arc to your fingers, and the string is hitting like the middle of my finger, kind of thing. It's a comfortable spot in the middle of my finger, and so I'm going to place all three fingers down. That's really important, and so another thing I should mention, and this is something I do, I don't know if this is what everybody else does when it comes to bending. So once I have my position like this, if you think of like just turning slightly clockwise, it's very subtle. Just look at my hand, you'll see it just turns slightly clockwise. So what it is that's doing is it's a way to, it's first of all comfortable, and what's happening is the bottom of the guitar neck is resting in that sort of that joint in here, that fleshy part of your index finger. I find that very helpful because when I'm bending up or down, like it gives it's basically a resting place, like it help me pivot. So when I'm bending up or down, that's comfortable. I can keep so not only is it comfortable in here, but I'm also, when I turn it slightly like this, clockwise, it's just that little groove that helps my hand fit in the bottom of the guitar neck. So it's a little subtle thing that you might not catch when when you're trying to learn how to bend. That's very important. So again, just turn your hand slightly clockwise, and as you move up and down the neck, that angle is going to change, right? So you'll just have to feel that one out. But for our purposes today, in the middle of the guitar neck, you can turn slightly clockwise, and that's just going to help you give you that control you need. All right. Again, feel free to ask any questions you may have about bending. Okay, so now that we've looked at the technique, let's explain why bending is important. So first of all, what bending is. Bending is when we take a note and we bend it up or down. So up would be like this, or down. And you hear a change in the pitch. So that's bending, is when we change the pitch by moving it up or down. And depending on how far you bend it down, it's going to determine the change of the pitch, the greater the change of the pitch. So if I just go slightly down, get a slight change of pitch. If I go further down, I get even further change of pitch. Now this is important in your guitar playing because, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's another way to express yourself, another way to feel the notes. And there's something about bending that just makes a statement. And especially when you're doing a guitar solo, it's just a great way to make a statement in your playing. Also, it's just one of those tools to help just with your expression. And it makes a statement and really helps with the emotional connection when you're playing your music. So, all right, so now that we've covered technique, let's just look at some tips and tricks. Okay. Actually, let me just demonstrate. I'll just play a bit, and so you can see the technique in action in real time. So here we go. See how the bending just adds this other layer of expression to your playing? Adds to that tension and release. That's what I like about it, is you can, instead of just going to a note, like for example like this, I can bend that note and listen to the difference. So we have just without bending, now with bending. I'm like slowly taking my time, just getting to that note. Without bending, now with bending. So here's some tips and tricks, things just to help you as you're learning this and navigating bending. The question that might come up is, how do I know whether to bend up or down? So I thought about this long and hard, and I realized there's so many exceptions, whether you bend up or down. And one point to make is that it is your own preference, something that you'll discover on the instrument. Personally, I usually bend down a lot. Just the way it happened, right? Just by playing the guitar, found myself bending down more often. But a lot of people bend up all the time. That's a personal preference. So that's one thing to mention. Another thing is, there's also practicality to it, I think. So whenever I'm playing, it also depends on where you're going next. So for example, if I'm bending and then my next note is going to be the string below the bended note. So for example, if I'm bending on the G string, and then my next note is on the B string right below it, to me, it makes more sense to bend up because it's getting the string out of the way. And I'm also going to be positioning my finger below it, so I'm already ready to play that note below. So it's like, now the opposite, if my next note is a string above the bended note, it might make more sense that I'm going to do a down bend. Because if I bent up, then the strings would be in the way of my next note. I mean, you could still bend up and just get your finger, the bended note out of the way. See how I release the bended note? Or you could just bend down. See how you can use an up bend or a down bend there? Again, this is personal preference, but I hope you can see that depending on where you're going next, that does sometimes determine whether you can do an up or down bend. The next thing that's going to determine the direction of your bend is depending on which string you're playing. So for example, if you're playing on the two low strings, the E and A string, you don't really have any room to bend up. Like you'd have nowhere to go, right? So if you're in the two bottom strings here, you're going to want to bend down. That's just one of those things. I wouldn't want to bend up. I have no room. We have a little bit of room on the A string to bend up, but you want to bend down. Now, on the two high strings, the B and E string, again, you're right near the bottom. You don't really have any room to bend down. You have nowhere to go. So for the E and B string, you want to bend up for sure. Now for the middle strings, you can choose which way you want to bend. Also, if your next note that you're playing is on the same string, for example, if I'm bending on the G string and my next note is also on the G string, you can bend up or down. It's really up to you. So up, down. I forgot to mention, when you're doing your technique, try to use as many, like when you're starting out, use your 3 fingers when you're bending, if you can. So if I'm bending on the 7th fret, I use all my 3 fingers because that's going to give me the most amount of control and strength to bend that note up or down. That's just a tip right off the bat. You could bend with 1 finger, but it's going to be very hard. And if you noticed, when I was playing a note right after that was on the string below or above, I had my finger already down, so I was only using 2 fingers on the bend. So for example, if I was doing a bend like this, if you notice I just have 2 fingers here bending, and my other finger, my index finger, is already ready to play that next note, or already on it. All right, so that's a tip on knowing which way to bend up or down. So another thing that comes up is tuning. This is a huge issue when it comes to bending. As you can imagine, you're bending the strings up or down, and that's going to put tension on the strings and loosen them, and that's just going to make the notes go out of tune. That's one of those inevitable things that it'll happen. A way to overcome the tuning issue is as you get used to hearing the notes, you can bend it in tune. All right, if you notice your G string's a little flat, you'll get used to knowing, oh, you need to just bend it a little bit more if it's flat. Another way you can get around a tuning issue when you're in a live situation, for example, and you don't have time to tune it, is that, or you can do some vibrato. So vibratos, you're going to wiggle that note, and you're going to, again, know, once you get used to playing a lot with these techniques, you'll get used to like, oh, I just need to bend a little, use my vibrato a little bit more here just to get it a little bit more in tune. So maybe that's a little bit flat right now because I've been bending it a lot. So I can add some vibrato, keep it in tune. So I was just playing it by itself, it might sound a little off. Add some vibrato. So I do a bend and add a vibrato in, keeps it all nice and neat when it comes to your tuning. But some other more practical things when you're just starting out especially is string gauge. So the lighter the strings, you know, the looser your strings will be. So it's going to help you with bending the strings easier. You have less tension, but the trade-off is tuning is going to be impacted. It might go out of tune more if you have looser, lighter strings on your guitar. I try to find, personally, I use lighter strings. I'd recommend if you're starting out on bending, I'd recommend getting light strings, probably 9s or 10s. But I think 8s are too loose, but 9s as your high E string, that's gonna really help you. Also, another thing to keep in mind is where on the guitar neck you're bending from. So the further down the, like over here on the neck, the strings are gonna be tighter here. That's just the way it is. Okay, so it's gonna be harder to bend these notes. But the further you go up, it is gonna be easier to bend those notes. So starting off, I recommend like doing what I like in the 7th position area, 7th to maybe the 15th fret in this middle area here. The further you go up, the looser the strings will get, and it'd be harder to keep the notes in tune. But I recommend sort of in this sweet spot right in here. Okay, so now another thing to keep in mind again too for tuning is using more fingers if you can. Obviously, if you're using your first finger, I'd recommend starting out with. It's easier to do like a smaller bend. Like for example, I wouldn't usually bend. Like that's just bending 1 fret. I wouldn't normally bend a whole tone here, like a tone. You can. It is a little harder. So if I was to bend to that note from here, I would probably reposition my fingers and bend with these 3 fingers. So that's a tip. The more fingers you use, the more strength you'll have to bend those notes. Another tip I should mention when it comes to tuning is where on the string that you're placing your finger. So, and also the pressure too. So if you're placing your finger down on the fretboard, sometimes we may not like consciously be aware of it, but when we place our finger down, we might be slightly bending the note without even realizing it. And that's going to just put the note out of tune as well. So we could just place our finger down and without realizing we're already bending that note. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you're just for general guitar technique. But when it comes to bending, again, you want to try to place your finger to the center of your finger as much as possible, or just wherever you'll feel a comfortable spot on your finger, and you want to try to keep it there. Also, I'm putting enough pressure too. I'm not, not giving it enough pressure. I'm trying my best to give as much pressure as I can on the string. Again, it's not really something I could show you. I wish I could. Something you have to feel out. So that's for tuning. So we've covered whether you bend up or down, and tuning. Another tip I would recommend when you're starting out with bending is to target the note first where you're going to bend to. So for example, if I want to bend to this note, I play that note first. So I go. The thing to do is like take your time going into the bend so you can really you're using your ear, you're listening, and take your time bending, and that'll help too with the pitch. So there you go. That's a really good tip. So when you're practicing, always play that target note first and slowly bend into it. And don't worry, it doesn't have to be so precise. This is something you feel, and it does take time. Okay, so maybe some exercises here that you can practice. So first thing I mentioned is, it's all about making a statement with your bending. So you can play it at the beginning of a line. So if you're starting a guitar solo, that's a really good place to put a bend. Another place to place a bend would be at the ending of a phrase. So if I was starting off with a couple notes, and I want to end that phrase, probably want to end it on a bend. It's a nice way to end it. Or for example, if you're doing a line, and that could be your target note, for example, like it'd be the way to the climax of that little guitar lick. So if I was doing something like this. So there you go. That's the first tip, or that's the first exercise. Example is all about making a statement. So either at the beginning of a phrase or ending of a phrase. Another thing I like to do is if I'm playing a note in my guitar solo, so say that was the note I was playing in my solo, I then I bend into it. So this is the idea. Just like the example I was showing you earlier with targeting your note first, then bending into it. This is actually a great way to play bends in your solos. Is like you play that note without a bend first, and then you reintroduce it by slowly bending into it, and just adds to this tension and release. So if I'm playing a note like in the 12th fret, those are two ways I would use bending in my solo. It's just a great way to also just, when you're doing your lines, it's just adding a bend. For example, you could also pre-bend a note so you can have the note already bent and then play it. I don't use that one as much, but it is something that you can use when you're playing. You could already bend the note and then play it. So they don't hear the bend, it's already bent. Another way that you can use your bends is to gradually ease into them or ease out of them. It creates a lot more tension. So you could play a bend like this in your solos, like. Or opposite, I could play a bend and then release out of it. So there you go. There's some little exercises you can practice. Different ways you can use bending in your solos. Yeah, there you go today. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to put them down in the chat. Thanks for tuning in. Before I end off the episode, just want to encourage you, if you got value out of today's episode, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. And if you can, give this video a like. All these things go a long way in getting the video and content out there to more people, to help more people with their guitar playing. So thank you guys for all your support. And if you got some value out of today's video, also feel free to grab, I put together a free resource, something that you can get for free. And it's just to help you in your guitar playing. I cover bending techniques in there as well. And it's about casting a vision, helping you see the bigger picture for how you can get better on the guitar. So I put together a 10-page PDF for you. It's got exercises. Here to show that for you right here. So there you go. That's something, free resource for you to download. The link is down below in the description. So feel free to grab that. Let me know if you're getting any value out of that. I've been getting lots of feedback, and people are really learning from this PDF. So please grab it. And thank you for tuning in. Your support means a lot. And until next time, next week's video, every Wednesday, rock on.